Do you know what it's like to wake up before the sun, in a world where the air smells of rot, and survival depends on how much filth you can carry? This isn't a fantasy. This was real life for millions of people in the medieval world. Today we talk about 9-to-5 jobs, burnout, and being underpaid. But back in the Middle Ages, the word job meant something far more brutal. It was the difference between life and death. And for many, it was often worse than death. This is not a tale of knights and kings. This is the story of the forgotten ones, the poor, the dirty, the desperate, the people who took on jobs so revolting, so dangerous, that even thinking about them might turn your stomach. They didn't do it out of choice. They did it because they had to survive. And today, we're going to walk through that world, one step at a time. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Gong Farmer, living in human waste. Imagine this. It's the year 1347. Night has fallen over a crowded English town. The streets are quiet, except for the soft squelch of boots pushing through thick, dark mud. But this mud isn't just dirt. It's human waste, rotten food, dead rats. And the man walking through it, he's called a Gong Farmer. What did he do? He cleaned out cesspits. Under homes and behind buildings, medieval toilets called privies emptied into deep pits, and when those pits filled up, someone had to clean them out. That someone was the Gong Farmer. He would climb into holes filled with human feces. No gloves, no mask, just a wooden bucket and a long-handled scoop. He worked only at night, not because it was safer, but because the stench during the day was unbearable and because no one wanted to see him. In fact, the law required him to live outside the city walls. That's how unwanted he was. But here's the strange part. Despite how horrifying the job was, it actually paid more than many other trades. Why? Because no one wanted to do it. People would rather die than climb into a pit of human waste. So the few who did earned more money. But what good is money when you live covered in filth and disease? Many Gong farmers died young. Skin infections, lung problems, and sometimes one wrong step in the dark pit, and they never came out. They drowned in human waste. This was life, not for one, but for many. Chapter 2. The Fuller, cleaning wool with urine. Now imagine another job, not quite as filthy on the surface, but just as disturbing when you understand what it really involved. It was called fulling, and the people who did it were called fullers. In medieval times, people wore a lot of wool. It was warm, thick, and durable. But raw wool was greasy, full of dirt, and sticky from natural oils. Before it could be turned into clothing, it had to be cleaned, and the secret ingredient for cleaning it, human urine. Yes, buckets of stale, fermenting urine. The ammonia in it helped strip the grease and oil from the wool, so fullers would stand barefoot in large vats filled to the brim with cloth, soaking in cold yellow urine. And then they would stomp for hours, stomping, twisting, kneading the cloth clean. The smell was overwhelming. The vats were often left outside in the sun. The air would turn thick with a sour, sharp stench. And the fullers. They often worked until their feet were raw and bleeding. No gloves, no safety, just a hard, wet, smelly job, done day after day. Some towns even had laws requiring every household to collect their urine and donate it to the fuller's shop. So not only were they soaking in human waste, they were soaking in everyone's waste. Yet again, the pay was better than many jobs, not because it was respected, but because most people couldn't stomach it. And over time, exposure to ammonia, bacteria, and long wet hours left fullers sick, blistered, and broken. But someone had to do it, or no one got warm clothes, and so they stomped on. Chapter 3. Leech Collector, bleeding for a living. Now picture a different setting. Early morning, a shallow, muddy riverbank, mist rising from the surface and wading slowly into the cold water, is a woman with bare legs and a wooden staff. She's not fishing, she's collecting leeches. This was the job of a leech collector. In medieval medicine, bloodletting was a common practice. Doctors believed that illness came from bad blood, And the best way to remove it was with leeches. So someone had to find those leeches, and they didn't just scoop them up. Leeches were best collected by offering fresh human skin. The collectors would stand in the water, still silent, until the leeches found them. They let the creatures latch onto their legs and drink. Then they would peel them off and drop them into jars. Some days, dozens of bites that bled for hours. Many leech collectors, especially women, suffered from infections. Some developed chronic anemia, but it was a job, and in some areas, one of the few jobs women could do to earn their own money, even if it meant offering up their own blood, just to survive. Satanas, breathing death to make leather. Let's go now to the edge of a medieval town. Follow the river, past the last rows of homes, to the foulest-smelling building in the entire village. You've arrived at the tannery. The people who worked here were called tanners. They made leather hunt for shoes, belts, saddles, and armor, but the process was horrific. It began with animal skins, raw, bloody, and reeking. These hides had to be scraped of flesh and hair, and to loosen that hair, tanners soaked the skins in a mixture of water and dog feces. Yes, and dog poop. Sometimes mixed with pigeon droppings too. Why? Because the enzymes in the waste helped break down the hair. The smell was unbearable. Workers stood in open pits, filled with rotting hides and in buckets of filth. They scraped, scrubbed, and stretched the hides for hours, their hands always wet, their skin cracked and sore. Tanning also used harsh chemicals like lime and tannins from bark that burned the skin and eyes. Some tanners went blind, others lost their sense of smell forever. And when they went home, no one wanted to sit near them. They stank of rot, of death. Tanners were avoided in the streets, yet everyone needed their work. Leather was essential, but the hands that made it were often ruined by it. Chapter 5. Ratcatcher. The Thai. Risky business of vermin. Now picture a narrow alley behind a medieval bakery. Flour dust hangs in the air. The scent of bread mixes with something darker, the rustle of small feet. In the shadows. This is where the ratcatcher works. Rats were everywhere in medieval towns. They carried disease, they spoiled food, and they bred faster than people could kill them, so someone had to hunt them. The ratcatcher moved quietly. He carried sacks, traps, sticks, even ferrets trained to chase rats from their holes. He would crawl through grain cellars and under floorboards into the most infested corners of the city, and it wasn't just rats, mice, weasels, snakes, even wild dogs. Some ratcatchers used poison, others used bare hands, but the risk was constant. One bite, and infection could set in. One scratch, and disease could follow. And if a plague broke out, like the Black Death, it often started with rats. Ironically, the very people trying to stop the spread were among the first to fall victim to it, and yet they kept working, because rats didn't care. They never stopped coming, and so neither did the ratcatcher. Chapter 6. Plague Barrier. Touching. The dead. Now close your eyes, and imagine a bell tolling in the distance. 1, 2, 3. A cart creaks down the stone road. The smell hits you before the sight does. Bodies. Stacked, wrapped in linen, some barely covered at all. This was the job of the plague barrier. When the Black Death swept through Europe, death came fast. Too fast. Whole families died in days. Churches ran out of space. Gravediggers quit or fled. So cities paid men to bury the dead. They were given carts, shovels, and masks if they were lucky. Most had nothing but rags over their faces. They walked from door to door, knocking, waiting. Sometimes people opened the door, then collapsed right there in the threshold. The buriers would drag the bodies into the street, lift them onto the cart and take them to mass graves. They were paid well, not out of respect, but out of fear. No one else would do it, and if they touched the wrong body, if they breathed too deep, their own end could be just days away. Some lasted weeks, others only days. They were both feared and pitied, but without them, the cities would have drowned in death. Chapter 7. Executioner, death's reluctant servant. Now, let's meet a man who was hated, but never ignored. The executioner. I didn't chase rats or bury plague victims. He killed people. Not in war, but in public squares. His job was to carry out justice. He swung the axe, tightened the noose, sometimes even lit the fire. And yet, he didn't always choose this life. In some towns, executioners were born into the role. Their fathers had done it, and their sons would too. Others were criminals themselves, spared from death only to deliver it. They lived in isolation. No one wanted to eat with them. No one married into their family. They were feared, needed, and forever stained by their work. The worst part? They often lived with guilt. Not every person they executed was guilty, and some deaths went horribly wrong. Botched beheadings, broken ropes, screams that echoed long after the crowd had gone home. The executioner drank, prayed, and waited for the next name on the list, because death waited for no one. Sineater, consuming the dead sins. In a quiet village shadowed by a crumbling church, a strange ritual unfolds. A body lies on a wooden table, cold, still. A crust of bread is placed on the chest, a bowl of ale rests beside it, and a man steps forward. He is the Sineater. His job? To consume the food placed on the corpse, believed to have absorbed the dead person's sins. With each bite, he was taking those sins into himself. Villagers watched from afar, crossing themselves, whispering. The Sineater didn't speak. He chewed, swallowed, and walked away. He was cursed by his work. No one greeted him in the streets. No one invited him to weddings, even in death. Sineaters were buried at the edge of graveyards, outside consecrated ground. But someone had to do it, because people feared the soul's journey after death. And this man bore that fear for them. Chapter 9. Lime burner, breathing. Fire, breathing death. Now walk to the mountainside. The air is sharp with smoke. White dust clings to everything, the ground, the trees, the skin. You've entered the world of the lime burner. His job was to heat limestone in massive kilns. The fire had to burn constantly, sometimes for weeks. The goal? To create quicklime, a powder used in construction, agriculture, and even in burial pits to speed decomposition. But quicklime was deadly. When wet, it could burn through skin. Its dust filled the lungs, searing the throat and scarring the chest. Lime burners worked near roaring heat, breathing in poison. Many developed what we now call silicosis, a slow suffocation. Their hands cracked, their eyes reddened, and their breath rattled even in sleep. But quicklime built cathedrals, lined roads, and buried the plague dead. So, the lime burner kept the fire alive, even as it slowly consumed him. Chapter 10. Muckraker, scraping the filth of cities. Now return to the heart of a medieval town. The sun is high, the streets are crowded, the ground, a thick, wet mix of everything horrible. The muckraker walks with a wide rake, scraping refuse from the gutters, animal dung, rotting food, even human waste. The job was endless. People threw trash straight out their windows and someone had to clear the streets before they became impassable. That someone was this man. He didn't wear boots, just wooden clogs. His legs were often soaked. His back ached. The smell clung to him for life. Children mocked him. Women avoided him. But without him, the streets would have drowned in disease. He kept the city breathing, barely. Yet no one ever said, "I thank you." Chapter 11. Bone Collector, the Keepers of the Forgotten. In the churchyards, when space ran out, graves were emptied. Old bones were removed to make room for new bodies. The bone collector's task was to dig through soil, carefully lifting skulls, ribs, femurs, whatever was left, and carry them to the ossuary. These bones were stacked neatly in dark, cold crypts, thousands of them. The collector worked alone. Each bone he touched had once belonged to a person. With laughter, tears, love, pain, but now they were fragments. Sometimes he found bones of children, sometimes skulls split by swords. He tried not to think too much, because if he did, the weight became more than just physical. He was surrounded by silence, by death, by memory, and when he went home his hands still trembled. Chapter 12, Resurrector. Stealing the dead for gold. Now we enter the shadows of the night. A shovel scrapes softly in a graveyard. A lantern flickers. Two men whisper. They're not mourners. They're grave robbers, or resurrectors, as they were sometimes called. In later medieval times, as medicine advanced, doctors needed bodies to study, but the church forbade dissection. The dead were sacred. So, bodies had to be stolen, fresh ones. The resurrector waited until burial was complete. Then came back that same night. He dug fast, uncovered the coffin, and pulled the body out. He sold it by dawn. Sometimes the family caught him. Sometimes guards did. If not hanged, he was beaten or banished. But the money was tempting, more than a peasant could earn in a year. And so, he kept digging. Each grave a gamble, each corpse a paycheck. Chapter 13, Alchemist's Apprentice. The Poisoned Student. Not every grim job involved death directly. Some played with the forces of the unknown. In the chambers of old castles and dusty towers, alchemists toiled to turn base metals into gold, to find elixirs of life, to master the secrets of nature. But it was their apprentices who paid the price. These boys, often orphans or desperate peasants, carried out dangerous experiments with mercury, arsenic, and other deadly elements. They mixed powders, heated vials until they burst, inhaled strange fumes. Many became blind, some went mad. Others simply wasted away, all in the name of discovery. They believed they were chasing glory. Instead, many found death, and their names were never remembered. Chapter 14, Woad Dyer, Drenched in Blue and Pain. Our final stop brings us to the world of color, but it's not as beautiful as it sounds. The woad dyer made blue dye, deep, royal, vibrant. But woad, the plant used, had to ferment. The process smelled like rotten eggs mixed with sweat. The dyers stood in giant vats, stirring the mixture, their hands and sometimes their entire arms stained deep blue. The dye caused skin infections. It seeped into cuts. It burned the eyes and choked the nose. They were called blue devils by some, mocked by children, feared by others. And when they walked into church, people whispered. But their colors dressed nobles, monks as kings. They bled and burned, so others could shine. Conclusion: the cost of survival. We often imagine the Middle Ages as a world of castles, chivalry, epic, battles and royal courts, but that was only the surface. Beneath it lived a different world, a darker one, a world of labor, sweat and survival, where people woke not to pursue dreams, but to escape starvation, where a job wasn't about ambition, but about enduring just one more day. They climbed into pits of filth, breathed poison, touched death, ate the sins of strangers, and walked away, silent. Not because they lacked ambition, but because survival was ambition. And while history remembers kings and warriors, let us not forget those who cleaned, buried, dug, scraped, and served in the shadows. Their hands built the world, even if history left them behind.